Hello everyone, welcome back to The Analyst, where we bring to you detailed discussion of important articles from both Hindu and Indian Express. Today is 9th of October and these are the following articles that we are going to discuss. In the first one, in light of the massive destruction going on in the Herat province of Afghanistan, we will explore the cases of earthquake and the disaster mitigation strategies. The second one, we will revisit the rail gauge debate, especially in India, and meanwhile, we'll also try to explore the railway infrastructure in India. From the third article, we will learn about the prospect of having a new umbrella legislation, that is, the Digital India Act in India, in accordance with the changing cyber landscape of world. From prelims point of view, we will be exploring Yom Kippur War in light of the recent Hamas attack of Israel. And in the last one, we will explore the species in news, that is Indian Dhole. So let's get started. In order to optimize your learning experience, do not forget to download the handout of this discussion in the description box below. So our first article deals with earthquake. Here, we will try to learn about the geophysical phenomena that is given in GS1 part of the syllabus and also disaster management that is given in GS3 part of the syllabus. So what is the context? The context is that more than 2,000 people have found to be killed in 2 days after a series of earthquakes have hit the Herat province of Afghanistan, that is the western part of Afghanistan. To begin with, what are earthquakes? Earthquake is a natural disaster which basically translates to quaking of earth or shaking or trembling of the earth. Now, why is the earth's surface getting trembled in first place? Because beneath the earth's surface, that is deep down in the lithosphere, there is a sudden explosion of energy, sudden release of energy due to one stressor or the other. And this sudden release of energy eventually gets transformed into multiple seismic waves that starts traveling in all the direction. And the moment these waves reaches the earth's surface, it breaks down the infrastructure, it causes damages, and therefore this is considered as a disaster. So this is about earthquake. Now, in order to understand the origin of earthquake much more in detail, let us understand it through this diagram. So deep down the lithosphere, where exactly is this sudden release of energy happening? What is the playground of earthquake? It is the lithosphere, the uppermost plate. Now, the lithosphere over here, as you can see, will be creating some plate tectonics. It will be having some plates. Now, there will be one region where the sudden release of energy has taken place. This region, which is seated deep below, is known as hypocenter. If we draw a line perpendicular to the hypocenter and locate that point on the surface of the earth, then this region is known as epicenter. So this epicenter is considered as a starting point. This is where the most destruction will take place. Now, as you can see, that the regions which are most vulnerable to earthquake are regions of vulnerability. Vulnerability as in regions where the thrusts are available. The thrusts or the fault lines that is between two diverging plates, two convergent plates, or between two transform boundaries. Wherever that boundary is available, that fault is available, that region is the most susceptible to earthquake. So what are the causes of earthquake now? Earthquakes are primarily of natural causes, but that is not it. There are anthropogenic causes as well. We'll try to explore both of them. First, let's come to the natural cause. And the first and foremost cause is plate tectonics. Now, the lithosphere is broadly divided and fragmented into multiple major plates and minor plates. These plates are not stagnant in nature. These plates are floating on a semi-solid layer which is known as asthenosphere. Now, because they are floating, they also rub off each other. And as a result of their interaction, this interaction could be in the form of converging plate, or could be in the form of diverging plate, or could be in the form of a transform plate. Now, due to this interaction of these plates, creates a lot of stress between the interaction point. This accumulated stress, whenever finds source or a vulnerable area like a fault line, it suddenly releases this stress. And the moment this stress gets released, it creates seismic waves. And these seismic waves, when hits the surface, trembles the surface of the earth, and therefore plate tectonics leads to earthquake. One classic example is the prevalence of 80% of world's earthquake in the Pacific Ring of Fire, because this is the region where active plate tectonic or convergence of plates is going on. So therefore, plate tectonic was the first cause. The second one is the prevalence of volcanic activity. So the areas where volcanic activity is high, in those areas, due to intense pressure and force that is given by the upthrusting magma onto the surface of the earth, the lava starts getting erupted. As a result of this, the volcanoes takes place, but at the same time, the pressure is built up in the rocks and the disintegration of rocks also takes place. So this displacement of the rocks also causes localized activity or localized earthquake prevalence. One such example would be St. Helens of California. So when the volcano of St. Helens erupted in 1970s, it also resulted in localized earthquakes around the area, around the state of California. So this is the second cause. Coming to the next one, the anthropogenic causes. Anthropogenic stands for human-induced seismicity. While they are not that dominant and prevalent in nature as compared to the natural causes, they also exist and they can be duly avoided also. So what are the human activities that leads to earthquake? First of all, exertion of a lot of manual pressure. Pressure by hydraulic fracturing, pressure by over drilling, pressure by mining activities. These activities exerts stress upon the plate tectonics, especially on the upper part of the lithosphere, making the plates very, very vulnerable. And therefore, the stress starts getting accumulated and henceforth also gets released whenever it finds a vulnerable zone. Next, reservoir-induced seismicity. So what happens if you start filling a particular vulnerable piece of land with a lot of water? Water column has got a lot of pressure. Now this pressure column would also exert undue pressure on the plates. As a result of this, again, the plate's stability will get degraded. And one such example was the event of Koyna earthquake due to the development of Koyna Dam in Maharashtra. So this is one such classic example of reservoir-induced seismicity. Second one is nuclear test. A lot of underground nuclear tests when gets performed, it also exerts pressure on the earth's surface, on the plates. And one such example is, or can be seen in North Korea. So back in 2006, when North Korea tried to hide their lot of nuclear experimentations, it got revealed because they also saw earthquake tremors in the region. So these are some of the anthropogenic causes. Now, how do we measure the earthquake? There are two scales to measure the earthquake. One is the Richter scale, the another one is the Mercalli scale. Now, both of them measure different parameters. What are these and what are the differences? So, if I want to measure the overall energy released by the plate tectonic or by the movement of the plates or by the interaction of the plates, then I am calculating the magnitude. And this magnitude or the amount of energy released by an earthquake is measured by Richter scale. But if I want to calculate the amount of disaster or the amount of effect that has been created on life and property, which stands for the intensity. So if I want to calculate the intensity of the earthquake, I will be taking up Mercalli scale. So these are the two measuring parameters of earthquake. Now, let's talk about the distribution of earthquakes across the world. So as we know that the most seismically sensitive zone is the Pacific Ring of Fire, and the second most seismic zone is the Alpide zone, the zone that you find in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. So this is the Pacific Ring of Fire and this is the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. Why? Because here prominent convergent plates convergent plates are moving close to each other. Now, also, there is prominent subduction zone. So, whenever there is prevalence of subduction zone, these are the areas where the most intensified earthquakes takes place. Now, coming to the distribution of earthquake or the seismic mapping of India. So, India broadly can be divided into 4 zones. Zone 5th depicts the very high risk zone. So here you can see that the northeast region or the upper Himalayan region and the Kutch region to be having the highest seismicity. And you can see the seismicity getting decreased as we move downwards. So this was about the distribution of earthquakes. Now, what are the reasons of earthquake in Afghanistan? Afghanistan is seeing one of the deadliest earthquakes in the past few decades. What is the reason that so many earthquakes takes place in Afghanistan? First reason is its location. It is lying in the Hindu Kush region, and as you can see that the Hindu Kush Himalayan region is formed as a result of collision of two very large plates. One is the Indian plate that is moving in the upward direction, and second is the Eurasian plate which is moving in this particular direction. And as a result of interaction between these two converging plates, and as a result of a very prominent subduction zone where Indian plate is actively going beneath and below the Eurasian plate, therefore we see strong occurrences of earthquake in Hindu Kush region, Hindu Kush Himalayan region, and Afghanistan is part of that. Second, Afghanistan is also having a lot of vulnerability. I have already told, wherever there are fault lines or thrust lines, that area becomes more conducive to the release of energy. The passage of energy takes place from that region. So in Afghanistan, there are many faults. One is the Chaman fault, second is the Badakhshan fault. So as a result of this, Afghanistan sees a lot of earthquakes, especially this one. Also, I have already told you that wherever subduction takes place, wherever active subduction takes place, that region is known as Vadati-Benioff zone. And in these zones, a lot of earthquakes takes place, that too with an intensity almost always greater than 5 on the Richter scale. This is the Herat province of western Afghanistan where a series of earthquakes are taking place, and these are the reasons why earthquake has been found often in Afghanistan. Now, what are the mitigation measures to counter or at least to prevent this hazard from becoming a very dangerous disaster? So first of all, we need to set up early warning systems. One issue with earthquake is that it does not leave any sign. It does not give us any sign whether it is coming or not. At least the window in which we can react is very minimal. But at the same time, we also need to make sure that some form of early warning should be shown. And one such beautiful case was shown by Japan. So there's a case study. In the year 2011, the world saw 2 earthquakes. The first one was the Islamabad earthquake. And the second one was the Japan's earthquake of Tohoku. Now, it was observed that because of lack of preparedness of the Islamabad, it saw the death toll to as much as 1,000 people. Whereas, due to the prevalence of early warning system and disaster resilient infrastructure in Japan, it was found that there were only 2 fatalities found in Japan. So this is how we can see, we can learn from Japan how if we build due mitigation measures, we will be able to lessen down the impact of earthquake or of any disaster. So early warning systems like that of Japan, like that of Mexico, which is known as SASMIX, which also helped to detect the Puebla earthquake, and as a result of this, people got some time frame in order to react to the earthquake. This time frame is not necessarily long, it is only of some minutes, but then that is also required, that is also important in order to at least save lives of people. Now, second one is to build the disaster resilient infrastructure. And not only that, we also need proper retrofitting of the infrastructure, especially the critical infrastructure, especially your hospitals, your transportations, and other critical areas like atomic infrastructure, like defense infrastructure. So, an example of this is Tokyo's Skytree. Skytree is one of the most longest infrastructure buildings that are built in Japan, and it is built in a technology that even the most worst earthquake is not able to fall it off. Second one is New Zealand's Wellington Lifelines project, where it is trying to retrofit all the critical infrastructure that is found in the country. Next is to involve the communities. Community engagement is very imperative when it comes to mapping the risk of the disaster, when it comes to having safer structures, when it comes to teaching them how to mitigate and how to respond to the earthquakes and how to have quicker recovery and rehabilitation. So, an example is California's earthquake drills under the name of Great Shakeout that are regularly conducted by the Californian government. Next is Nepal's community-based earthquake risk reduction program, where participation of communities also make sure in order to build the infrastructure that is disaster resilient. Next is we need to garner international collaborations, not only to have the early warning systems affixed, not only to get such warnings from across the world, but also in order to give that or bring out that information to different parts of the areas which are risk zones. First example is Pacific Tsunami Warning Center. This is managed by NOA, which is basically the weather forecast and the disaster management agency of USA. And this agency is responsible for disseminating the earthquake related information to all the Pacific Island nations, which are not equipped with enough capital and enough resources to create such resilient infrastructure and early warning systems their own. So therefore, this is one such example of international cooperation. And second is Global Seismographic Network that is also developed in line to provide dissemination of earthquake related information to everyone. Next and the last one is disaster response. Once the disaster has struck, we are no more left with mitigation. We have to perform quick recovery, quick rehabilitation. So for that, rapid deployment of the rescue teams and the search operation should be done. Then temporary housing solutions should be provided in order to rehabilitate the people who are affected, and also provide infrastructure repair efforts as soon as possible so that the economy can revive itself quickly. Now, one more global effort in the right direction would be Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure that is built by Japan and also in collaboration with India and many other countries. So, following measures can be taken up so as to prevent the casualties that can be seen in many cases of earthquakes, especially in the Herat earthquake. Coming to the next topic, we are going to revisit the rail gauge debate. This pertains to infrastructure, GS3 part of the syllabus, and what is the context that in this article, the overview of the rail gauge system has been shed light upon, and the prospects of integrating new rail networks with the existing ones is also explored. To begin with, what is a rail gauge system? So in very simple words, rail gauge is basically the minimum principal distance between two tracks of a rail, which means that if this is a track of the rail, and if I consider this as the last point, then the distance between these 2 points is known as gauge, railway gauge. Now, what is the railway gauge system in general and how much of it is followed in India? So first of all, railway gauge system can be broadly divided into narrow gauge, broad gauge, meter gauge, and also standard gauge. The world right now follows mostly the standard gauge system. How do we differentiate between these two? Depends on the length, variability of the length of the space between the two tracks. So let me tell you a number which is 1.435 meters. If the distance is less than this, then this is known as a narrow gauge system. And if the distance is more than 1.43, then this is known as broad gauge system. In a special case of narrow gauge, if the distance is equal to 1 meters, then this is known as a meter gauge. And a standard that is typically followed is the standard gauge system, which is basically 1.435 meters. So this standard gauge is followed generally in the world, But when it comes to India, we are prominently following the laying down of broad gauge railway network. That is one that is having a length of approximately 1.67 meters. Alright. Let's also quickly talk about railway networks. We've got the vastest network. We are the fourth largest railway network in the world and largest in the Asia. Not only that, our railways are divided into 18 zones and it is stretched to about 65,000 kilometers. And what is the historic inception? For the first time, railway was built as a result of British effort through Lord Dalhousie, as we know. So, between Bombay to Thane, a broad gauge system was laid, and this was of 34 kilometers. Railways are also some parts of railway are also included in the UNESCO heritage site. So there are two sites. First of all, the Darjeeling Himalayan Railway, because of the aesthetic, because of the landscape and the nature view, and Nilgiri Mountain Railway, which is basically following the meter gauge. So both of these systems, it is the only railway system which is following meter gauge in the India right now. So these two are included in the UNESCO heritage site as well. Now, when it comes to India, the broad gauge started in 1853, ever since the first railway infrastructure was laid down in India, that is between Bombay to Thane. Very, very basic. But then a lot of areas, especially the hilly areas, the remote areas, the tribal areas, the mountainous areas, where that much space cannot be accommodated because the lanes are very, very constricted. So therefore, the need of narrow gauge also started prevailing. So narrow gauge, today 12% of the total network of the railways is made up of narrow gauge, and this is mainly prevalent in the hilly area, especially in the northeast and in the Himalayan terrains. Next, the meter gauge. The meter gauge started in 1870. This was basically to cut down the cost that is laying of railway infrastructure is taking up, because it also takes less space as compared to broad gauge. So the first of its kind was of Nilgiri Mountain Railway, where the meter gauge was laid for the first time. And in India right now we only have this particular railway station. All the other have been converted into broad gauge railways under the uni gauge policy that Indian government adopted in 1990s. And last but not the least is the standard gauge, one that is followed prevalently in the world, but we only follow it for the rapid transport system like your tram system, like your metro systems. So metro specially follow the standard gauge, and it started in India from 2000s. That's when the metro started developing in India. E. Sridharan, the metro man of India, was one of the supporters of using standard gauge system in India. Now, which system is better among them? Why should we follow the uni gauge policy? Something that we are going to explore now. What are the benefits and challenges of the existing broad gauge system? Because India largely uses broad gauge. Under the uni gauge policy, it was said that all the gauge systems have to be converted into a broad gauge so that uniformity across the railway network can be set up. What are the benefits? First of all, since the tracks are wider, as a result of this, they will be able to accommodate larger coaches. Larger coaches means more population will be able to get into it, more cargo will be able to get into it, and as a result of this, the total passenger capacity or the cargo capacity per train will go up. This will improve the efficiency of the train working. So, higher capacity is one benefit. Second is stability and speed. Now, when such large trains operate, their speed is maintained under due stability. That is, the chances of accidents are far less as compared to the narrow gauged or the meter gauged railways. This also ensures faster train operations, because now I will be able to move my train in higher speed without having the risk of any accident. As a result of this, the overall efficiency of the working of train will also increase. Next, compatibility with the fleet, because the amount of cargo that a broad gauge railway network can accommodate is naturally far more than a narrow gauged one. So therefore, it is ideal for freight transport. Therefore, it also reduces the logistic cost. It also boosts or gives a multiplier effect in the economy, and as a result of this, it supports India's economic activity and also India's connectivity. Next, what are the challenges? Because not everything is good with broad gauge. So what are the challenges? First is Space requirement. Since more space is required, therefore it cannot be used in regions which are spatially challenged, like the mountainous regions, like regions with steep slopes, deep valleys. There only narrow gauge networks can be laid down, like your northeast, like Western Ghats, etc. Next, it is having high turning radius because of huge size. So therefore, it also sometimes decreases the speed, especially at the points of juncture where the turn has to take place. Especially, it causes accidents or might cause accident wherever a sharp turn needs to be taken. As a result of this, the throughput decreases in the region where the turning needs to take place. What is throughput? The total number of trains that a particular track can accommodate. So this also decreases. It also has higher initial cost because it takes huge space. It has more, it needs to have more input, it needs to have more metal, it needs to have more infrastructure laid down, and as a result of this, initial cost of working is quite high. Next, it has limited applicability in hilly terrains, as I've already told you that this is spatially challenged a little bit, and therefore these challenges can be addressed by using standardized gauge or the standard gauge systems. Now, what is good about standard gauge system? First of all, the universality. Why? Because most of the countries today are using the standard gauge system only, and not only that, it also supports high speed, high technological cabins, high technological loads. So therefore, standard gauge can be used if we want to pursue the uni gauge policy. This will also take less space as compared to the broad gauge system. It will also be more cost effective because it can also take up high speeds, especially as we can see in the rapid transport system metros. They are very safely able to commute at a very high speed, and they are only working in the standard gauge system. So the author is arguing that there are different challenges and there are different benefits of both the standard gauge system and the broad gauge system. But the entire idea should be to have whatever, but to have a single railway gauge system. That is, either you take up the broad gauge and implement across the transportation system, or either you take the standardized one and you apply it all over the transport system. So what are the benefits of having an integrated rail system? First of all, it simplifies the network for us. The railway operations will become ease of. Second, we won't be needing a lot of gauge changing infrastructure again and again. As a result of this, the infrastructure cost will go down. The running operation or the operation cost will also go down. Next, it also ensures seamless movement, interoperability across one train to another. So you need to go from Mumbai to Ahmedabad. You have taken a high speed rail, high speed metro suppose, and then now you want to go to some other place using your normal Indian railways. You can do it very easily if it is transporting or if it is taking advantage of a single type of gauge system. So interoperability will also decrease the logistic cost, will also decrease the cost of seamless movement. Next, it also improves the efficiency because you will not need to create any gauge changing points. Therefore, it will also reduce the need of transshipment of goods and passengers that are needed to be conducted in these gauge changing points. It improves the overall efficiency, it also reduces the transit time, and it lowers the operational cost. Next, it also produces economies of scale because once you have standardized gauge system, then there will be economies of scale in production, in the sense of platform development, in the sense of interoperability, maintenance, rolling stock procurement, so on and so forth. And last but not the least, integrated rail system also ensures that we can very easily perform network expansion without changing much, because bulk production of standardized gauge can be done very easily. Next, we can also ensure that it is compatible and integrated with the entire railway system. So these are some of the reasons why integrated railway system should be taken up, and this is the need of the hour. Coming to the third article, here we'll talk about Digital India Act. This is in line with government policies and interventions, especially in line with the changing cyber landscape. So, what is the context? The recent announcement of Digital India Act 2023 has been done by Ministry of Electronics and IT. So, what is the Digital India Act? This is basically a proposed umbrella legislation in order to replace the digital legal framework of India. What is the existing legal framework of India? This is the IT Act of 2000. Now, when this act came up, it only was there to regulate the e-commerce companies and in order to take care of some of the cyber crimes. But at that time, Internet of Things was not there. Artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, the talk of 5G was not there. So therefore, a lot of new advancements, new opportunities and challenges that came up with the rapid increase of internet user base, rapid increase of the information technologies and associated intermediary platforms. A lot of the challenges were not addressed by this act. So therefore, there's a need to completely overhaul this act in the form of a more comprehensive legislation which takes care of multiple areas of digital India. So this is your Digital India Act. Now, what is the need of a modern legal framework? For that, let's first understand the entire context. Let's first compare Internet of 2000 with what we have Internet as today. So, back in 2000, when the IT Act was promulgated, that's when only 5.5 million Indians were on Internet. And right now, about 850 million Indians are using Internet. The growth rate is highest in the world, making us the largest digitally connected democracy. Next, there was only one type of intermediary back then. Either it was www, either it was some website, or either it was one or the other social media. There were not multiple intermediaries, but today we have e-commerce websites, we have artificial intelligence, we have digital media, we have OTT platforms. So many digital intermediaries have sprawled up, and we also need to now regulate them duly. Next, previously, it was considered as a healthy space for communication, for aiding communication between people, especially those who are residing in far off distances, allowing people to interact with each other. And now it is considered as a space of criminalities and illegalities, especially with the emergence of dark web, deep net. Next, traditional forms of user harms at that particular time were cybercrime, cyber security, and some forms of hacking. But now we have got a plethora of issues, plethora of crimes from one form to another, including breach of data privacy, catfishing, doxing, cyber stalking, cyber trolling, gaslighting, phishing, etc. Then, previously, it was a source of information and news. So it was a very innocent source of information back then. But now, it has also led to proliferation of hate speech, disinformation, and fake news. It has also led to a lot of communal violence, a lot of hatred, a lot of radicalization of people. So therefore, today's internet needs a much more complex and comprehensive legislation. So therefore comes the need of a modern legal framework which encourages, first of all, the adoption of the rapid technological advancement. Technology needs to be welcomed whenever it comes. Yes, it is a double-edged sword, but if we regulate or if we over-regulate the technology, we stop it, then it will not help us or help our economy to have its due share of growth. So therefore, it is very important to allow innovation to penetrate in the country, to allow these technological advancements to take place in the country, especially the 5G technology, the AI, the blockchain technology, which will massively increase the economic growth and the economic output of the country. So it is an enabler legislation. It enables the growth of these technologies. It provides some legal measures, some ethical measures which needs to be followed. It also ensures protection of both the companies, the consumers, the buyers and the sellers, so that the atmosphere of development of this technology can prosper in a healthy way. Next, protecting digital consumers and users. Now in India, we have got 850 million people that are using internet on a day-to-day basis. Now, as we know, this is a huge consumer base. They need to be protected. They need to be protected with respect to their data, the data privacy against cyber crimes. So protection of the users is also provided in many forms through this legislation. Next, we also need to address the new forms of user harms. This includes cyber stalking. This includes trolling, which also impacts mental health. And it also addresses doxing. Doxing is when you expose the personal information in a very malified form in the internet in order to demean anybody. So these are some of the harms which this particular framework legislation is about to address. Next, it also ensures regulating emerging digital platforms and services. So what are these emerging platforms? We have already seen it is your different types of social media intermediaries. It is also different forms of OTTs. Not that India doesn't have any legislation for them. India has already rolled out some legislation in the form of IT rules, in the form of OTT regulation rules. But at the same time, we need a holistic framework which combines everything in one place, which replaces the IT Act and which overhauls the digital space of India. So, next is fostering innovation and entrepreneurship. So, when it aids and when it aids the technology, development of technology, when it protects the consumers and the users and the buyers, it also makes sure that the innovation environment and the entrepreneurship environment is also created in the country. And as a result of this, we will be able to grow fully into a digital India. Now, what are the prominent features of this particular act? So, particular act is a comprehensive legislation. It has got a four-pronged approach. First of all, providing data security, data privacy. Now, this particular provision was nowhere to be found in the IT Act of 2000. So, therefore, this act is a very welcoming step. Next one, it also provides legal adjudication against the crimes. So now you can officially file a complaint under IPC section because due amendments on IPC has to be made in accordance to create some of these crimes or to bring some of the crimes under its ambit. Next, it also provides data governance policy. So national data governance policy is also in line with the Digital India Act and is one of the four prongs. Next, it also provides a lot of rights to the user. So it reinstates users' free speech rights under the freedom of expression that is guaranteed by Constitution under Article 90. Now, with not only that, it also gives user or the content owner the right to file a complaint or to have grievance redressal, and for that separate grievance redressal appellate committees have also been set up. Also, social media platforms initially used to have their own independent moderation policies which are very subjective in nature. Now, in order to standardize and create a uniform moderation policy, constitutional protection has been provided instead of and replacing these moderation policy. So if anyone is having any complaint regarding breach of their free speech right, they can move to the committees which are laid down under this particular act. Also, it ensures online safety against the new forms of information technology. As I've already told you, there's artificial intelligence, there's deep fakes, there's doxing, there are competition issues between different intermediaries, and there are also issues of data protection. All of them hampers the online safety of an individual, especially the more vulnerable sections like children and women. So in order to safeguard them, it has got provisions for all of these features. Next, it also has provision for a new adjudicatory mechanism in light of having criminal and civil offences committed online and listed into the IPC. So now you can file the complaint under a section of IPC. Next, it also questions the safe harbor principle of the social media. So social media says that we are not liable for any content produced by our user. But what happens if a user has spread any fake news, any extremely radical news, or any irresponsible news which is responsible for creating hatred in the society? Then in that case, government should be having some powers in hand. Government, through Information Technology Rules of 2022, has said that we will be able to remove the users or the content put up by the users with the help of these social media platforms by questioning the safe harbor principle. because it should not be endowed upon the social medias completely. Which means that while social media platforms are not directly liable, but if the government calls them to remove any content, then they have to be responsible and they have to remove the content in light of the protection of sovereignty and security of a nation and its people. Also, it calls for having an open internet so that internet is affordable, accessible and available to everyone. But at the same time, it makes sure that some regulations are also in place. So for every wearable device, for example, your smartwatches, your Apple watches or any wearable, any gadget should be having a KYC mandatory verification so that it cannot be misused for malified activities. So these were the provisions of Digital India Act. It is not in force yet, so let's see what's going to happen ahead. Now, from prelims point of view, we are going to see the Yom Kippur War. What is the context? That the attack of Hamas on Israel has brought back the memories of the Yom Kippur War, which essentially reset the power equation in West Asia. So, what was this Yom Kippur War? Before that, what is Yom Kippur? So, what happens in Judaism? There is a 10-day pious ritual of performing repentance. The 10th day or the last day of this series is known as Yom Kippur. And this is considered as the most holiest day in Judaism. This is celebrated by Jews. So basically, this is considered as a very holy day for the Jews, and especially in Israel, it is considered as a very important festival. Now, on this particular day, a war was waged by Syria and Egypt on Israel. And as a result of this, it created one of the deadliest attacks on the Israel. Therefore, this is known as Yom Kippur War. This is also known as Ramadan War because the month of October at that time was also the month of Ramadan, also considered as a very pious day. Now, Yom Kippur War is conducted from October 6 to 25. This is also the time when the recent violent attacks have taken place in the Israel, and therefore similarities have been found between the two. So let's first explore what is the background of Yom Kippur War. First of all, what are the similarities between the current violence? As I have told you, first similarity is the date. The recent clash has taken place during the festivities which are going on, the 10 days repentance that are going on. And this is also the time when the Yom Kippur War has taken place back in 1973. That is more than 50 years ago. Next, both of them are one of the deadliest attacks on Israel. The Yom Kippur War caused fatalities of as many as 2,000 Israeli soldiers. And when it comes to recent attack, about 200 to 400 people have been killed so far by the Hamas terrorists. Next, criticism for an unprepared state of Israel has been the talk for both the cases. Why? Because during the Yom Kippur War also, because they were engaged in the celebrations, in the festivities, therefore the soldiers were largely unalarmed and therefore they could be very easily attacked and killed. Despite Israel being technologically and military-wise very superior over Syria and over Egypt, and still it was found unprepared and therefore it was taken, the benefit of its vulnerability was taken up and it was attacked duly. And this is a very similar thing which is happening right now also. Next, what is the background? Background lies in the third Arab-Israeli war. So in the year of 1967, a 6-day war was waged by Israel on the Arabs, specifically on Egypt and Syria. As a result of this, because of the military superiority of Israel, they conquered and they won victorious. And they proclaimed that they are invincibles. So as a result of this, they acquired the territories of Egypt, that was the Sinai Peninsula of Egypt and the Golan Heights of Syria. So Israel has captured these two territories. Offended by this, after some years, both the countries again decided to attack on an unalarmed Israel. That is why they chose the date or the time of Yom Kippur celebration, and a coordinated attack was made on Israel. Israel delayed response was obviously there because the soldiers were on a leave due to the celebration, due to the practice of repentance that everybody was forming, and as a result of this, about 2,000 casualties happened in the Yom Kippur event. What was Israel's response? Israel did innumerous number of counter strikes. Eventually, again, it was uh, victorious, and the ceasefire needs to be set up at some time. So, therefore, the intervention of United States and Soviet Union came. Soviet Union sided with the Arab, and United States sided with Israel. As a result of this, the entire global political power now became alarmed, and the tensions between these two superpowers started escalating. In order to stop these escalation, United Nations intervened and it brokered a ceasefire from October 22. So this basically did not really cause defeat of Israel, but it caused loss of its military superiority, loss of its reputation of invincibility. What was the significance of Yom Kippur War? First of all, Israel initially scrambled because of loss of property, loss of the lives of soldiers, and heavy casualties. It also impacted Israel's perception as a military superpower. It also caused the resignation of the then Prime Minister of Israel and her cabinet. So, therefore, this was one of the game changers of the political powers of West Asia. What happened end of the day? Since Israel already won, there needed to be established a peace agreement between Syria, Egypt, and Israel. So, under the Camp David Accords, it was agreed between Israel and Egypt that Sinai Peninsula, that is acquired by Israel, will be given back to Egypt in the year 1978. And in 1979, there was a peace treaty which took place between both the countries, and this enabled the first ever Arab recognition of Israel. What were the consequences of Syria? Unfortunately, there was no positive outcome. The Golan Heights are still, the fertile plateau of Golan Heights is still in the hand of Israel. So this was basically the result of this war. And in case UPSC asks you about the location or to map the event of Yom Kippur, then you have to make sure that you are mapping it with Israel. Other important fact from prelims point of view is the Camp David Accords. We already read about the Abraham Accords. So please make sure that you are also remembering Camp David Accord and between whom it is signed. Coming to the last topic of the day. Due to increased prey base and habitat, Asiatic wild dog and the other carnivore species, that is tiger, are now existing in harmony, that is in coexistence. This is propounded by another study which has studied both of the species in the Manas National Park of Assam. We study this because we read about species in news and biodiversity in prelims. So what is the context? That the overlapping prey availability shows a positive correlation between the population and the habitat of the two carnivore species. But here in case we are going to study about Indian Dhole or Asiatic wild dog. So what is an Indian Dhole? This is a wild carnivorous animal which resembles a fox, but it is of canine breed, that it is a wild dog. It is also scientifically called as Huon alpinus. It belongs to Canidae family and it is a mammal. It belongs to the class of Mammalia. What is the habitat? It basically lives in the dry forest or in the dense forest region. Its historical habitat started from the Hindu Kush range. It was also found in Russia. It was also found in China. But today, due to decline of population, and mind you, there are only about 1,000 species of wild Asiatic dog available right now. So therefore, due to massive degradation of their habitats, they are now concentrated only in the Southeast Asia and nowhere else. At most, they are found in the southern parts of China and not above that. In India, they are found in three clusters. These three clusters include your Ghats, that is Western Ghat and Eastern Ghat, then your central India plateau, the forest of Dandakaranya, and the northeast region of India, especially the Manas National Park that we have seen in the news. What is the conservation status? As we have seen that there is rapid decline in their population. Only about 1,000 species are left, so definitely they are going to be endangered. So according to the IUCN Red List, they have been accorded the status of endangered species. According to CITES, they have been enlisted in Appendix 2 and they are enlisted in Schedule 2 of Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Why is their population decreasing is the next point of discussion. So first of all, loss of habitat degradation due to encroachment of their land, due to man-animal conflict, due to rapid urbanization, taking up of agricultural activities, rapid deforestation, fragmentation of forest corridors. These are the reasons why Indian Dhole or Asiatic wild dogs are rapidly declining. Next, depletion of their prey base. They feed on ungulates. These are basically species like sheep, like horses, and because of their fall, because of overgrazing, deforestation, the overall population of these species, the dhole, is also seen to be on decrease. Next, excessive hunting and habitat loss is another reason. Second, they are also killed because they predate on the livestock, which the farmers and the humans want to save for their consumption. So therefore, because of livestock predation, they are attacked, they are killed. Second, they also get affected by disease, a lot of disease, because largely their population is localized, as you can see, and therefore they are not immunized much. Therefore, their disease transfer is very much easy, is very much possible, and as a result of this, they get diseases easily from the local or the domestic feral dogs. So this was the discussion of Indian Dhole, and this was all about today's news analysis. I hope you liked it. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.